In this video, we are going to look at the overview of the cardiovascular system. Now, after this video, you will be able to understand clearly what the entire cardiovascular system is about and what are the components of the cardiovascular system, that is, what is made up of the cardiovascular system, and why we need the cardiovascular system. Now, we are going to organize the cardiovascular system this way. We have a separate playlist for the cardiovascular system, anatomy, and the cardiovascular system physiology. So if you are new to this channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like and share this video. Now let's go straight into the overview of the cardiovascular system. Let us take a look at this word, cardio and vascular. So this word cardio is derived from the Greek word cardia, which simply refers to the heart. And this word vascular is derived from the Latin word vasculum, which simply means vessels. The cardiovascular system is dealing with heart and vessels. But then to clearly understand what this system actually does, we will say the cardiovascular system is the transport system of the human body. Now, what does this mean? Let us look at this high yield part of the cardiovascular system that examiners love to ask. Why do we need it? In other words, the importance or the functions of the cardiovascular system. So I said cardiovascular system basically is a transport system of the human body. Now, this transport system does three key or major functions. Number one, delivery. Now, the cardiovascular system does delivery of one, oxygen, nutrients to the various parts of the body where they are needed, hormones, electrolytes, and immune cells, etc. So that is one of the functions or reasons why we need the cardiovascular system. Now, the second we will say is removal. Now, removal of what? So since the cardiovascular system is a transport system, it's not only delivering, but it's also removing what? Carbon dioxide, or let's say metabolic wastes, right? So carbon dioxide, CO2 for short, urea, and other metabolic waste, bilirubin, etc. That's another key function of the cardiovascular system. Then in addition to delivery and removal, three, we say regulation. Now, regulation of what? Blood pressure, pH balance, communication between organs, etc. So now that we have a clear understanding of what the cardiovascular system is a transport system, and why we need it for what? Delivery, removal, and regulation. Now let's look at the components of the cardiovascular system. Now, if you look at your basic knowledge of biology, you will understand that the human body is made up of basic units called cells. Now, when these cells come together to perform a specific function, we call them tissues. Now, these tissues also come together and form organs. Now, different organs interact or work together to provide a specific or a coordinated function. We call it a system. Now, that is the same thing here in the cardiovascular system. Now, the components of the cardiovascular system. Let us first of all look at each of them. So, we say components of the cardiovascular system, right? Components of the cardiovascular system. Now, what are the components? What is made up of the cardiovascular system? Now, one of the components, or the number one component of the cardiovascular system, in fact, from the word cardiovascular, is the heart. What is the heart? So, in a very simple term, the heart is a muscular pump in the cardiovascular system. So, it's the central organ in the cardiovascular system which pumps blood, aiding in everything I have just highlighted in both transportation, integration, and regulation. So this diagram you are seeing is just a sketch of how the human heart looks like. So this is the central organ of the cardiovascular system. If you want to get a very detailed diagram, labels and everything, go down in the description of this video, visit our website and download our free PDF with a very detailed diagrams and very detailed notes so you can study for exams freely. Now, the second component of the cardiovascular system are what? The vessels. Now, let's look at it this way. The vessels are the delivery channels. So these are the channels leading to different organs, different parts of your body that is enabling the delivery, the removal, and the regulation processes. So the vessels are very important, and I'm going to explain in a more detailed about the vessels in a separate videos. But now let's just understand that the vessels are also part of the components or are parts of the cardiovascular system. In fact, from the word cardiovascular. Now let's also look at the other one, which is the blood. Now, without the blood, the cardiovascular system is unnecessary, because for the delivery process, for the removal process, and for the regulatory process to happen, it is the blood that is going to mediate all this. So it's basically the vehicle through which all these processes are going to happen, right? Or that is going to carry out all these processes I have stated, like delivery of oxygen, removal of carbon dioxide, nutrients, electrolytes, and everything. So the blood are, in a simple way to understand, we will say they are the vehicles. The vessels are the road or the channels, the highways, and the heart is the central control panel or the pressure pump. It pumps and everything, goes. So this is basically all the loading points of the vehicle. So the heart pumps, then the vessels are the road or the highways through which all these processes are going to happen. So these are the major components or the key components of the cardiovascular system. Now, let us briefly look at an overview of all of each of these components. Now, we start with the heart. So this diagram you have seen is just a sketch of the human heart. If you want to see a more detailed diagram, down in the description of this video, visit our website and download our free PDF notes, which you can study for exam. So this is the human heart. Now, the heart is the central organ of the cardiovascular system. This organ works non-stop. So if it stops working, delivery, removal, and regulation will stop. And if that happens, you are not going to survive. So that is why it is one of the most important organs of the human body. But now let's look at some key components of this heart. In a separate video, we are going to look at the detailed anatomy and structure of the human heart. Now, the human heart is a muscular organ, and it has 4 chambers. So you see these holes here, right? So these are the chambers. So now we are getting clear picture of the heart, right? So the septum is dividing the heart into 2 parts, the left part of the heart and the right part of the heart. But now let's look at it this way. So the first chamber here we have on the right part, or these chambers that are up here, are called atrium, right? So this is the right atrium. Here we have right atrium, and here we have the left atrium, right? So these are the atria. Then the chambers below here are called ventricles. So we have right ventricle and left ventricle. Something interesting about the cardiovascular system. Our body needs oxygen for survival. That is why we are always breathing in and breathing out. But you probably may not know why this is happening. Now, this is happening because your body needs oxygen. And this oxygen is going to be delivered to every part of your body with the help of this cardiovascular system. So that is why all these chambers are playing greater role in ensuring that oxygen is delivered and carbon dioxide is removed. Now let's look at here. The right atrium here is receiving blood from every part of the human body. Just understand it this way. So the right atrium receives blood from every part of the body. Now, this blood that is coming to the right atrium are not oxygenated. That means they don't have oxygen. They lack oxygen. So we call it deoxygenated blood. Now, they are entering the right atrium via these two very large vessels. Hence, cardiovascular system, right? Now we are seeing the connection between the heart and the vessels. So this is basically an integration system. So all of them work together to provide a specific function. Deoxygenated blood is coming here. The blood lacks oxygen, but then it has carbon dioxide. So the removal process, right? So deoxygenated blood comes here, deoxygenated. Now, understand it this way. Blood coming from the systemic circulation to the heart is deoxygenated and it's entering the heart through the right atrium. Now, in the right atrium, this blood is not going to stay here. It's coming here in the right ventricle. Now, what the right ventricle will do, because it's deoxygenated and our body don't need deoxygenated blood, because in the deoxygenated blood are metabolic wastes that are poisonous or toxic to the human body, is going to send it to the lungs. So just understand that the right ventricle is pumping the deoxygenated blood that is coming from the systemic circulation and is sending it to the lungs. Why? Deoxygenated blood has carbon dioxide, and in the lungs you are breathing in oxygen. So this blood is going there to get that oxygen and give off the carbon dioxide. This is basically what the right atrium and the right ventricle do. They receive the blood from the systemic circulation and send it for oxygenation. Now let's come back to the left atrium and left ventricle. What do they do then? So this blood that is going to the lungs for oxygenation is going to come back to the heart. But then this is a closed system, so they are going to ensure that the blood remains in the circulation. And that is why we have two separate parts that are working together to ensure that the blood remains in the circulation. So the right ventricle sends it to the lungs, and after oxygenation, when you breathe in oxygen, you are breathing out carbon dioxide. This is the process. So the blood goes to the lungs, they give off the carbon dioxide, and then they take the oxygen. Now automatically that blood becomes oxygenated. Now this oxygenated blood from the lungs is coming back to the heart via the pulmonary vessels. Now, and they are going to empty into the left atrium. So now we are understanding that the left part of the heart is receiving oxygenated blood, and the right part of the heart is receiving deoxygenated blood. So when the blood from the pulmonary vessels or from the lungs via the pulmonary vessels enter the left atrium, that blood is going to be sent, just like here, to the left ventricle. Now, what would the left ventricle do? This is the real magic. The left ventricle then pumps this blood into the aorta, and the blood goes all around the body. Now, let's also look at the vessels quickly. So in the cardiovascular system, we have three types or kinds of vessels. One, we have artery. Then two, we have veins. And three, we have capillaries. In a separate videos, I'm going to explain their structures, their functions, and everything. But then for the purpose of this video, we have artery, veins, and capillaries, all made up of the vessel components of the cardiovascular system. Now, what are the arteries? And what are the veins? And why capillaries? So let's look at it this way. Arteries are all those vessels in the cardiovascular system that are taking blood away from the heart. So they take blood away from the heart. The veins take blood towards the heart, whereas capillaries are integrating this work between veins and arteries. So this is basically where exchange is happening. in the capillaries, right? They are the smallest vessels of the cardiovascular system. Arteries, veins, and capillaries are the vessel components of the cardiovascular system. So understand it this way: arteries take blood away from the heart, and veins take blood towards the heart. Now, some people might think that arteries carry oxygenated blood and veins carry deoxygenated blood. Now, this is a very tricky part you have to take note of in the exams, because not all arteries carry oxygenated blood. Some arteries carry deoxygenated blood, especially here in this case. I told you deoxygenated blood enters the heart, and because blood is coming towards the heart, that basically means these vessels are veins. So superior vena cava, we call it, and inferior vena cava, but we'll explain it in a more detailed video. If you look here on the left atrium, veins are carrying blood, vessels are carrying blood towards the heart, and this blood is oxygenated. So if they are carrying blood towards the heart, then we call them veins. So they are pulmonary veins. So pulmonary veins are carrying oxygenated blood. So let me draw this scheme so you can understand what capillaries, arteries, and veins are. Arteries are taking blood away from your heart, and veins are taking blood towards your heart. Capillaries are ensuring that exchange takes place, because in your arteries you are delivering so many things to the organs. It can be oxygen, it can be hormones, it can be nutrients, etc. So when this exchange takes place in the capillaries, that blood is coming back to the heart via the veins. So arteries is taking it away, and veins are taking it towards. So this is actually how it works. This is the loop, or this scheme explains exactly how the vessel component of the cardiovascular system works. Now, there's something interesting about the human heart. Unlike other organs, the heart is a muscular pump, but then its activity is not controlled consciously by us. That is why it has a well-organized electrical system that is keeping it working 24/7. We need to note few things. In the heart, there are pacemakers. These pacemakers, they work intrinsically. They generate electric current intrinsically without you asking them to do so. So literally, we have here, we have one of the pacemakers here in the atrium, and this pacemaker is called SA node, sinoatrial node, right? SA node. Then there is another pacemaker here, a reading drive here, called the AV node, atrioventricular node. Then we have the bundle of His, and this bundle of His has two branches. Has the right bundle branch, the left bundle branch, and then in the myocardium here of the ventricles, here we have the Purkinje fibers. The Purkinje fibers. But then in our physiology lecture, I'm going to explain detailed how the electrical system, or the electrical conducting system of the heart works, that enables the heart to contract and eject blood all over the human body. The electrical conducting system of the heart is made up of the sinoatrial node, which is a natural pacemaker. This is where the electric current is generated for the heart. And then we have AV node, like the regulatory center, right? Electric current generated from SA node sent to the AV node is regulated, comes via the His bundle of His, and then into the Purkinje fibers. So guys, this is the overview of the cardiovascular system. If you want to understand the complete anatomy of the cardiovascular system, I would encourage you first, you go to our website, download all our notes, and then come and watch all the videos in orderly manner. In the next video, we are going to look at the topography of the heart. We'll look at the skeletopy, the syntopy, and the holotopy of the heart. And then from there, we will look at the detailed anatomy, this detailed structural anatomy of the human heart, and later we will look at the hemodynamics. So we'll look at the blood supply to all the parts of the human body, and we'll also look at the venous outflow and lymphatic drainage. So if you've learned anyway from this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like, and share this video. Most importantly, watch all our lectures in orderly manner on this playlist.